You need a revolution. System ain't gon' change unless you make it change. You need a revolution. You need a revolution. System ain't gon' change unless you make it change. You need a revolution. You need a revolution. System ain't gon' change unless you make it change.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Raphael Cohen. I'm here in Oakland, California, on behalf of the campaign to free U.S.-held political prisoner Russell Maroon Shoatz. And I am truly excited and so honored to be joined by Selma James, another longtime Maroon supporter and a rightfully globally celebrated writer, thinker, activist, and champion for women's rights and human rights, really. And
I hope so.
Yeah, you definitely are. And you've been in town for the last few days doing a number of speaking engagements, and I'm really thrilled that you are able to take some time out to talk about Maroon and some of the various issues that are embodied in his now 40 plus years of imprisonment. This interview will, I imagine, first be posted on the relaunched website for the campaign to free Maroon. So I thought that we could maybe start there and have you talk a little bit about how you first became aware of Maroon's case, his history, his activism, and what compelled you to correspond with him and get involved in the struggle to free him from prison.
Well, you know, it was pretty accidental because I live in England, although I'm American by birth, and I was visiting Mumia, whom I first went to see because I had a question. And by the time of the first visit, I forgot the question. And we just became really good friends, and we did the book together, his Jailhouse Lawyers. And I was visiting Mumia, and Maroon, I didn't know, was in the visiting cell next to his. And a woman who was going back and forth, who was a kind of social worker, whispered to me, "There's a man called Maroon next door, and he really wants you to wave at him." I said, "Sure." And so I made some excuse to go to the ladies' room, and on my way back, I just waved, and he waved back. And then Mumia told me something about him, and I was quite intrigued by what he had done and how he had gained the name Maroon by trying to run away, by running away, having been refound and brought back, but nevertheless running and getting out and being his own person. And also I was very impressed with his face, even though I only caught a glimpse of it. And so I chased up what he'd written, and I was really taken by something in his writing, which was this. He was interested in how to organize, and he was interested to find out how people had organized at high points in the history of black people. And I had not found anybody who was as interested to organize as we in the global women's strike, and B, that was smart enough to look at history and find out how people had organized, to learn about the options, you know. It was just unusual, and I've not found anybody else like that who really is so consistently interested in how people can get together when they want to change the world. That's why I stayed in touch with him. I wanted to know this man who had interests that was similar to my own in this regard.
Right. So in terms of thinking about models of organizing at historical high points of activism, we're in a pretty watershed moment, at least in the US right now. Another one, there does seem to be a renewed resistance movement around police brutality and, speaking less politely, state-sanctioned murder of black people and people of color more broadly. It seems like there's a new generation of folks who are coming into political consciousness around this issue particularly. At the same time, there are these issues, mass incarceration as a tool of capitalist profit, of social control, and certainly the issue of political prisoners. A lot of the movement elders who have been on death row or life imprisonment for decades, often on trumped-up charges for their political involvement in the 60s and 70s. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how we can use this opportunity of heightened awareness around state violence, particularly against black people, people of color more broadly, to increase awareness of and activism around the issue of political prisoners and mass incarceration.
First of all, I have to say that it is true that the movement was provoked by state murder.
Yeah.
But this is not the first state murder.
Sure.
In fact, I'm told that 9 people have been killed by the police in St. Louis alone since the murder of Michael Brown. But there is no question that everywhere the movement for justice is coming up. Not only the movement for justice in prison, the movement of justice for women, the movement of justice for employees, just the movement for justice and for liberation. It's coming up everywhere, and each of the corners of that movement has its own case to make against capitalism and capitalist repression. And I think that what's happening in Ferguson and St. Louis is really useful to the rest of us, not only because it's pointing out the state and its murderous policies, which it is so used to it doesn't even notice that it's happening, but because a new generation is coming up, which is fresh and which we hope will not have as much trouble making the connection between different corners of the movement as generations before have had. And also because people have to catch up with the 25 or 30 years that the movement has been increasingly repressed. They have to relearn what we learned in the 60s and 70s. They don't even know that yet, but they can do that in a minute.
Much
that
quicker
won't
now.
take, absolutely. You know, a lot of it they assume. I don't even know how they assume it, but they do. I've seen this before, where the new generation somehow stands on our shoulders without even trying. Thank goodness for that. I think one of the problems that the movement has in making that transition to a broader movement and broader connections between different aspects of the movement is to grasp that while we fight our own struggle, we must always be aware that we cannot scab on other sectors or ignore them. We have to always be aware in what we are doing, what others are doing, and how we can be useful to them. You know, while we were in St. Louis recently, we attended a press conference trying to save the life of a man on death row. He was guilty of sin, but that didn't mean he should be killed for it. I'm against murder, especially state murder, because they kill who they want to kill. And we were quite struck. They had a press conference against the death penalty, which would have been perpetrated, and in fact was ultimately perpetrated against the black man, and they made no connection with Black Lives Matter. And Margaret Prescott, who was a journalist with us, asked the question, I mean, what is the connection between what you are saying and Black Lives Matter? And they said, well, yes, there is a connection, and it's true. You know, it's black people who are getting the death penalty most, and every life is of value, and said that Black Lives Matter, but it wasn't instinctive. There was a way that people were still thinking that if you make a connection with other strugglers, you are weaker rather than stronger. And that's really the barrier that we face as a movement right now, and that's what we go around the world saying, look, we're stronger. Don't mind the people one at a time are weaker and poorer, but you're stronger with them, and the powers that be know very well that you are strengthened by the connection. Don't mind they laugh, they're really crying. That's the crucial thing, because one of the reasons that this is a problem at all is that sometimes organizations of the left try to connect us and lose the specific demands and concerns of a particular sector. Like you have to drop your own case in order to make the wider case. No. The wider case is every case together. There is no case that must be lost. The question of sexual choice, the question of legality or illegality, the question of gender discrimination, all of them, every single, the kids who complain about the education they're getting or not getting, as the case may be, every single question is connected at the root. Okay, we don't get to the root, but we get to the fact that they are fighting for justice, we are fighting for justice, we put our case forward, and we respect their case and do everything we can to be supportive while we are making our own case. That is absolutely crucial, and that's how I relate, and people from the Global Women's Strike generally relate to Mumia. We're a women's organization, but Mumia is a man who's fought for the movement. Therefore, he is of interest to us, and we make our case and say there are men who support our case, and in turn, we support them.
We need a revolution. System ain't gon' change unless we make it change. We need a revolution. We need a revolution. System ain't gon' change unless we make it change. Need a revolution. We need a revolution. System ain't gon' change unless we make it change. We need a revolution. We need a revolution. System ain't gon' change unless we make it change. Need a revolution.